Hi everyone, today I'm going to paint a sheep, but I'm going to take an approach slightly different to the way I normally paint animals. So the way I normally work, if you've seen some of my other videos, is I normally start with some line and shade work. And I do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes I do it with a brush, sometimes with a pencil, sometimes with an acrylic paint marker. But today I'm actually going to start with a colour beginning. And as you can see, I'm just putting down a haphazard set of blotches of cadmium yellow paint onto the paper. And once I've done this, I'm just using, as you can see, a 1-inch decorator's brush. So no need to be precise with this at all. In fact, the whole point is to establish a random set of colours and marks. So now that the paint is starting to run out of my brush, I'm just scumbling the brush across the paper to create some dry brush marks and different effects. And now that we've done that, I'm going to add just a touch of fluorescent red to the mix. And as with the yellow that I just put down, I've got plenty of water mixed in with the paint. So I'm just putting down a thin layer. And as you can see, you also get lots of little bubbles and brush strokes in the layer of paint that you put down. So they add texture automatically in a way that you cannot replicate consciously. It's a random array of textures, so it's genuinely different each time you apply the brush to the page. Now, this technique of using a colour beginning you can use not just for painting sheep or animals, but for literally anything you do if you so desire. I did a little series of videos called Too Busy to Paint, Focus for 5. And in that series of videos I actually used a colour beginning to start a painting depicting a crowd in a city scene. So you really can do a wide range of subjects. Now, having done that, I'm going to add just a little bit of burnt umber to the mix and do the same again. And this time I've just decided at random really to apply the paint just by placing the brush onto the paper rather than moving the brush while it's in contact with the paper. And once again, we're getting a very different set of marks compared to before. So I think that's my colour beginning pretty much finished. So now we just need to take a break and let the paint dry. So the paint is now dry and I'm going to start putting in some line work on this sheep. And I often do this with a brush. But today I'm using an acrylic paint marker, and I'm using one which has got about a 5mm wide nib, so it's quite a narrow nib. And one of my favourite colours for doing line work is usually ultramarine blue, or even a lighter blue, in fact. But today I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I'm going with a purple. Perhaps that was because I've used a lot of yellow in the background, and purple and yellow are complementary colours. Then again, it might have been just random. I don't know. No particular rhyme or reason, to be honest. I just thought I'd try something a little bit different today. So as you can see, I've started to put in some line work to describe the outline of the head and the ears of the sheep. And then now let's place the neck. And sheep, as I'm sure you know, have these wonderful ringlets of wool going around their neck, so we'll just indicate a few of those just to begin to show the three-dimensional quality of the neck. And then the chest comes down here and tucks in so that the top of the leg is more or less directly below the nose. And then the wool on the other foreleg comes down a little bit lower. And then the back, or the first part of the back at least, is more or less horizontal. Then it dips down a little bit, and then it's rather more rounded as we go towards the rear end. And then we sweep down, and we need to give the sheep its belly as well, so nice curve to the belly there. And there's the wool covering the upper part of the first hind leg. The other rear leg is peeking out around about here. And now we've placed the other foreleg in as well. So as you can see, I'm not going to have enough room to include the feet of this particular sheep, but that's okay. What I'll do is I'll put the animal in some long grass, something like that, so that it still places him in an environment. Now, having done the line work, I need to check I've got my proportions reasonably correct. So one of the ways I do that is I'll take a brush and I'll place the handle of the brush, the tip of the handle, on the chin, and then I'll place my finger level with the top of the head, and then I will compare that distance to the distance from ear tip to ear tip, and in this case, in my drawing, they are about the same. So I'm now going to do that. You won't be able to see this, but I'm now going to do that with my reference photo. So I'm holding my arm out straight, and those proportions are about the same in the reference photo as they are on my drawing, so that's okay. The next check I'll do is to measure the distance from top of head to chin again and see how many of those will fit into the length of the back, and it's just over 3. So once again I'm going to do the same thing with my reference photo, and I think I've made the back a little bit too long, and in fact the head's looking too small. I can now see that just looking at the drawing from a distance. So what we'll do is I'm going to change colours now, and I'm going to use some Prussian blue. So there are 2 ways to go now. I could either try and shrink the body, or I could increase the size of the head. But before I do that, what I'll do is I will just check how tall the body is compared to the length of the body, and it's just over halfway. So that proportion's not too bad. So I think the main thing I need to fix is the size of the head. Now, on my reference photo, the distance between the top of the head and the bottom of the head is about the same as the distance between here and here. So I'll just check that again. Yes. So I think I've made the head too small. This is essentially the problem. I need to make it a bit bigger. So I'm going to use a different colour to do that. And we will just do a little bit of surgery on the sheep. Thankfully the surgery is pain-free, and hopefully and that's rather better now. I may even make the head a little bit larger when I continue to paint into this, but for now we'll leave that there. Now that we've got the outline of the sheep reasonably well established, I'm going to take a 3/4 of an inch flat brush, and I'm just using a thin mix of burnt umber conventional acrylic, and I'm going to use this to begin to describe the shadow areas on the sheep. Now, because I'm applying the paint very thinly, this has 2 effects. The first is, just like when we put down the first layer of paint,